I think it was a con, and she was so nice to Daniel. I mean, pity she wasn't so nice to her own staff. I mean, she was when she was at Kensington Palace.
I think there's a great danger that the deal won't be continued, or certainly not in the numbers that we've seen, the number that they signed with back then.
The whole thing was false. It wasn't even her own house. It was somebody else's house. Drinking tea that wasn't tea. I just thought it was terrible.
Hello, I'm The Sun's royal editor, Matt Wilkinson, and this is Royal Exclusive. Today we have in the studio, and a warm welcome to, news.com.au royal correspondent Bronte and The Sun's legendary photographer Arthur Edwards. Right guys, With Love Meghan has been absolutely savaged. It's been roasted by the critics. Now, we're not TV critics, we are royal experts. But Arthur, we've watched it. Why is it so bad?
I just think it was just completely over the top. Everybody was amazed. Everybody, in the show, oh, it's amazing. I love that. I love that. There was everything about it was just false. And, nobody's got that time in the morning to cook breakfast, lay the bacon out beautifully in the pan. I mean, the kids must be going to school late every day waiting for their breakfast. I mean, it was just false. And the whole thing was false. It wasn't even her own house. It was somebody else's house. It wasn't, looking at the mountains, wasn't even a view from her home. Drinking tea that wasn't tea, it was absolutely awful tea. If you gave me a cup of tea, I'd give it back to you. It was dreadful. I mean, it just like a urine sample. I just thought it was terrible. I just thought the whole show was terrible. I wouldn't know what I did. Couldn't watch the second episode. And as far as, this is series 1, I doubt there'd be a series 2.
We might talk about that in a little bit, about what the future is for this show. Yeah. We mentioned at the beginning about the TV critics, and I'll just read a few out to you. That they're nightmare reading, to be honest. They're very savage. Critics compared it to food add-on steroids, an exercise in narcissism. It's worse than frying your eyeballs, which wasn't on the recipe, just to add. Variety Mag, I mean, these are mainly UK reviews, but in America, Bronte, they were also very scathing. And Variety magazine, I think, is the most damaging for Meghan. It says it's made with a great deal of love, in the sense that the greatest love of all is the one that a person has for herself, i.e. Meghan.
Ouch.
What was your take from watching this?
Look, I went into this with two minds. I genuinely there was moments I felt quite sorry for her in the lead up, only that the weight of expectation on this series after having 4 releases, one of them's done quite well. Other than that, there's been a string of disappointments for Netflix. So there's so much expectation going into this. And on the show, I have said a few times, I actually think this is an area she should be looking into. She cares about lifestyle stuff. Maybe this is what her passion area will be moving forward. I watched the whole thing, all of it, so no one else has to. It is so boring. I was so bored. I was so disappointed to be so bored, because you watch it and you go, okay, who's she trying to reach here? She's trying to reach America, and you've mentioned the reviews there, but the reality is that the reviews in America aren't very good either. So that has clearly not landed. And the reason I think is because you're watching it and going, this was finally 5 years on from leaving the royal family after all these rebrand attempts. This was the moment we were going to see just Meg. This is the Meghan that we've heard about, that we're finally going to see in her happy environment. There were so many times during the show where she began to say something mildly interesting or personal and then just completely steered away and talked about, an egg yolk instead. There was a moment she was gift wrapping. This is the best example of what I'm talking about with steering away from anything interesting and it being so completely beige. She's gift wrapping, and she mentioned the fact that she used to teach a gift wrapping class when she was an auditioning actor. That in itself is not, a fact that's going to change the world, but it's a moment of personal reflection that could have been an interesting anecdote about who Meghan really is and who she was before Harry. Instead of going into that in any way, they kept talking about the gift wrapping, immediately whooshed straight past it, and that's kind of what the show felt like. You look at the shows or people that she's obviously trying to emulate. It's the Gwyneth Paltrows of the world. It's the Jessica Albas of the world, who have these billion-dollar lifestyle companies. But they had also sold themselves as personalities for years. We don't have that of Meghan yet. So we needed to see a little bit more personality of hers interspliced with this aspirational living, and I think that would have worked.
Arthur, Bronte's called it boring, and that is a kind of common theme of attack against this show. There was one review which suggested that because it's so bad and people are slating it so much, that it may actually force Meghan to become more exciting, or Harry and Meghan to become more exciting by returning to dishing the dirt. Is that the danger, the fact that this is quite dull, as I think we all agree, that the only way she succeeds is if she does come out and speaks about the royals and dishes the royals and returns to how they were when they appeared on Harry and Meghan, the Netflix series?
Well, you can't say much more rubbish to the royals than they've already done. I mean, Harry's had a real go at it with his book. And the Oprah Winfrey show, she didn't pull back, so I don't think they can do that anymore. And also, what's the point? People don't want to listen to that. I think the show, like Bronte said, you got fed up with it in the end. You just want it to end, and that's no approval of the TV program. You're really looking for the next series or the next episode, but I couldn't face the next episode, let alone another series. And quite honestly, I think she wasn't a bad actor. She was quite a good actress. I mean, she should stick to acting. That was all false. I mean, it was somebody else's house. All the stuff was brand new. Every kettle was gleaming. Kitchens are not like that. People haven't got time for that cooking like that. I mean, she's no Mary Berry. That was a cake where it was beautiful on the inside. Well, it's fine, but who says that about a cake? Nobody. It's just, it was false. The whole thing was just, I don't know. I think it was a con, and and she was so nice to Daniel. I mean, pity she wasn't so nice to her own staff. I mean, she was. When she was at Kensington Palace, So it was false, absolutely false. And I'll tell you what, I think there'll be no second series. And if there is, I think whoever's watching it must be bored must be not bored, must be excited by it, because I thought it was terrible.
I agree with a lot of what you've said, but I will say there is clearly a space for aspirational shows. They exist. There's a lot of them and they're really successful. Again, but the problem here was there wasn't that way of watching this shiny life, which can be okay, but with a little bit of, self-awareness in there. I mean, the fact that all the guests turned up and really a lot of what they were saying over and over again is just, Meghan, you're so amazing. And there wasn't sort of any cheeky banter about it. There wasn't her, as I say, showing some self-awareness of the fact that it was such a lavish display. I think that there's a way to make that work, and I just don't think it landed at all. It just felt very, very glossy. And again, we just learned absolutely nothing about her.
When Daniel said, I said, what a lovely way to present the piece. I can't believe it. I mean, it was just so...
I think there was one stage when he also said, this is going to take several hours. And she said, well, have you got somewhere else to go? We're like, I think we all just went, we've all got somewhere else to go.
The kids must turn out to school at playtime.
I mean, is there a problem? You're talking about she's selling her lifestyle. So this is the whole move that Meghan's been making in the last couple of years, really, since the abuse that came out on the Harry and Meghan Netflix show, and also Spare, that she's been trying to portray herself as this happy-go-lucky California girl. Here's my lifestyle. Here's my happy, wonderful life. Is it the case that we are only interested in Harry and Meghan when they dish the dirt, when they appear on Oprah, when they write books like Spare, and when they just become fronting a lifestyle show, that we're just turning off and thinking, well, you're not the personality, this interesting personality that was slagging off the royals that got all the headlines? Well,
this was the great experiment with this series. This was really her one big chance to sort of steer the ship in a different direction. Human nature is that we love gossip, we love salacious gossip, we love tell-alls, we do. People that even hate read Spare or hate watching Harry and Meghan, a lot of people just, there is an element of curiosity to that. I think they did the right thing in moving away from it, but as I said, the problem was that Meghan then needed to sell herself as interesting in other ways, and she hasn't really landed that. So I think that's the problem for them ongoing. I don't really know how they go back or reach anywhere near the level of success they've had from the explosive tell-alls and that sort of era, because now, I mean, she's faced with the problem that reviews all over the world are pointing out that she is quite boring on screen.
At least I know how to make a candle now. That's what, any time I need to make a candle, I know how to do it now.
we as I say, we're not TV reviewers, we're not TV critics, we're royal experts, but could it have been a little bit better if the guest list was a bit better? Because we've reported today in The Sun, reported this week in The Sun, that they did struggle to get any A-list names. I mean, she's friends with Serena Williams, and Serena Williams wasn't there. You think she invited George Clooney and Amal Clooney to her wedding and the Beckhams to her wedding. There are people that she has claimed to have known, and none of them turned up.
Even her husband turned up till the end.
Well, let's talk about
exactly.
that.
I mean, she's married. She's married to a prince of the realm here, and he didn't even bother to turn up. I mean,
I can see why there was parts. Yeah, I can see why she kind of had it a bit separate from him, but at the same time, she referenced him a fair bit as my husband. We all know it's Harry. You can just say Harry. Yeah. But the only thing we learned about him, even just as a fun personal fact, is that he likes bacon and salt. Again, there's an opportunity there. He didn't even necessarily need to be a presence in the show, and it didn't need to be all about him. But let's learn more about you, Meghan, and your life with Harry, or this person that you're trying to sell us to. I felt like I came away from it. I know that Harry likes bacon and salt, and I don't think I heard his name once throughout the whole series.
The thing is, Bronte, would you watch it if you didn't have to for the job?
Oh, yesterday, absolutely not. It was a slog. It really, and I wanted to like it. I really have to say, I wanted to go, okay, this is the new direction. It's worked. And within 10 minutes, I was like, I can't believe how many more episodes I must watch of this.
Yeah.
You mentioned about Harry. We did see him briefly, I think, in the final episode at the big brunch with all the friends. This big kind of celebration at the end of the show. Yeah. When I watched it, I thought maybe he looked a little bit uncomfortable. And what was your thoughts about seeing Harry at the end of the show?
I didn't bother to get to the end, to be honest, Matt. I had enough of it after one. It just, I was wasting my life watching it. I wasn't going to do it anymore.
It was you've used the word there, it was a very brief appearance. Again, I can understand why that may have been a decision they've deliberately made, but yeah, it wasn't, I would have thought maybe if he only popped up for a minute that it would have been very much to sort of have a powerful minute with Meghan and telling her how proud he is and how wonderful it all is, maybe. And I don't think we really saw that. So.
I don't really could face eating that cake. It was beautiful on the inside, or the streaky bacon, which he would have probably disliked. But I think he should have been there for the first time, because sort of, she's what he is because she married him, and that show just doesn't stand up on her own with just her. No.
Just finally on the show itself, we obviously had the Harry and Meghan show before on Netflix. We've had Oprah Winfrey. How do you think the royal family would treat this show? How do you think their reaction is? They haven't said anything yet, but do you think behind closed doors they're talking about it? Are they relieved that it's kind of scandal-free? What's your... You know the royal family quite well. You know the King and William. What would they be thinking?
Well, if the King told me he watched it and liked it, I'd be surprised. But I don't think he would anyway. But, I think, look, it's one of these things this criticism is going to do. A lot of people are going to watch the show to see for themselves. So probably... Netflix will get probably good ratings at start, but look, the royals are not going to comment on it. I mean, it's just be interesting to see what our Queen says about it, because she's quite a good cook herself. But whether they comment, I doubt it, Matt. In many ways, I saw it just because I wanted to talk about it. I had to do a piece for the paper this morning about it. I wouldn't have bothered watching it, but there are people that are interested in that. But I watched Mary Berry cook a cake last night, and it was brilliant. And Meghan's no Mary Berry, and that's the end of it. And if you want to watch a cooking show, get someone who can cook. Jamie Oliver, Mary Berry. There's so many of them, and I just thought that was just all false, just false.
I think the royals must be relieved that they don't really have to react to this one, because really there's not... For once, it really actually felt like it had nothing to do with them in that regard.
Now, Arthur's already touched on this. I think your view is that it's unlikely to get a second series. I sound like Alan Partridge now. Will I get a second series? Will I get a second series? But, Bronte, what do you think? Do you think there's enough in there to merit Netflix continuing with this contract? Because... Netflix could look at this and say, look at all the reviews, the contract's going to run out at some stage. We are in deep with them, with Meghan, with As Ever as well, but could it be a second series?
Well, looking at the context of when she and Harry signed this monster Netflix deal, which is apparently worth somewhere around £80 million, but it ran for 5 years, and at the time that they signed it, it was very much an era where Netflix was doing these big deals. That is no longer the case. There has been quite a restructure. The streaming industry looks very different now than it did back then, and obviously they'll be reviewing all of this. They're paying very close attention to all the money that they're spending. And for that reason, I think there is a very big danger, given that Harry and Meghan, the show, was really the last big success that the couple had with their output. There's a lot riding on this series. I think a lot of people will have watched it, whether they hate Meghan or they love her, because there's, the hate-watching part of it as well. There's clearly interest, even though a lot of people have no actual admiration for her. But at the same time, that won't carry through for season 2. That would be the hate-watching element would be season 1. So I think there's a great danger that the deal won't be continued, or certainly not in the numbers that we've seen, the number that they signed with back then. And Harry and Meghan sort of need to keep these big deals going because they have a very expensive lifestyle, particularly with security and everything. So I think it is in danger, yes, of being axed or significantly reduced.
Where would they go, Arthur? So if Netflix suddenly say, well, they were literally funding their first 5 years of their life in California, where would Meghan and Harry be left?
Well, eventually they're going to run out of ideas, aren't they? And people are going to not be interested. I mean, that's the thing I think will happen. People will lose interest in them completely. I mean, at the moment, people will be obsessed with reading about Meghan. You look on social media, it's all about Meghan and Meghan and Meghan. And, when read the papers, it's all about Meghan. She seems to be attracting the publicity and so on. But eventually it'll fade, I think. I think she's given it she gave it her best shot yesterday. It just wasn't good enough.
So we touched on this earlier, but As Ever is wrapped up into this deal, into this TV deal. We've got the show that we've been watching, and we've got her As Ever brand. So we have all kinds like teas, flour sprinkles, shortbread cookie mixes. Do you see that taking off and selling on the back of this show?
I do feel like they are inextricably linked. And again, once this initial interest and hype of the release of the show dies down, which I think will happen quite quickly, particularly fueled by these terrible reviews, I got to say, I don't think it looks great for the brand then off the back of that, because she really needed to sell herself to sell her wares. And I don't think she's been able to do that here. So I don't see this becoming a raging success, to be honest.
I mean, if a play on Broadway got those reviews, it would close. It would close in a week. It wouldn't be no second reviews, it would be no second shows. I mean, it's just, please God, there's not another show.
Arthur, I sense you want to move on from talking about the show. But we can't. We will try our best, because I want to talk about what we call Meghan Markle now. So front page of The Sun earlier this week, she'd done an interview in which she had said, the name Sussex is very meaningful to me. Then in the show, I don't know if you got to this stage, but episode 2, she has Mindy Kaling, and Mindy Kaling says something, calls her Meghan Markle, and Meghan turns to her and says, it's so funny, but don't you know I'm now a Sussex? So Meghan's rebranding herself as Meghan Sussex. Why is she doing that? Well,
because without Sussex, without marrying Harry, she'd still be probably in Suits or shows like that. I mean, she's elevated to a sort of very famous person now. Since she married into the royal family, as Diana did, as Fergie did, as they all do when they marry into our royal family. So she's famous because of that, and. She'd have walked around London when she was in Suits, no one would have recognised her. Now, of course, she's a star. And she said in, I think, the show, she said she doesn't like Pete staring at her when she's at the yoga class. Well, what do you expect? I mean, she's an international celebrity. And if she wants to call herself Sussex, I mean, that's her married name. I think that's what she wants to call her, we'll call her that. But everyone will know as Meghan Markle. I mean, it's just how it is, and she can call herself Sussex if she likes, but
is Sussex her married name? Is Mountbatten Windsor or Wales? It's very complicated.
Well, the thing is
she's kind of rebranding herself.
Well, the title is she should be Wales or Mountbatten Windsor. I mean, that's what their son is, Mountbatten Windsor, isn't it? So, but I don't know if that's too long for her. She prefers Sussex, and also she's the Duchess of Sussex. I don't know how many times she's been to Sussex. Maybe once.
They went once in 2018.
Yeah, so I mean, we should go and ask the people of Sussex what they think. But quite honestly, it's just a name, and if she wants to call herself that, she can call herself what she likes. I'll call her Meghan Markle, and probably carry on doing that.
Do you have an issue with her rebrand? This is yet another rebrand. She's now Meghan Sussex, not Meghan Markle. Do you take any issue with that? I
don't take issue with it. I found it very pointed. She obviously has been bothered by this because the fact that the People magazine quote came out, obviously, I think that was a day before the show launched. And then it was in the second episode. And for her whole hangout with Mindy Kaling to be condensed into half an hour, and that to be a very specific part of it, saying, my name's Meghan Sussex now, and here's why. Clearly, this is something that's very important for her to get the message out on. I think that it possibly could have helped maybe endear her slightly to the region of Sussex if she'd mentioned it, but instead it was just, I match the kids. But as Arthur said, look, I get confused by the royal last names. They seem to change them all the time. When you read the biographies and stuff, they've always got different last names. So I can understand that maybe she's just drawing the line in the sand and that's it from now on. But yeah, it was very pointed.
Well, my theory on this is that things are deliberate. And she could have easily edited that out, because it appeared to me a little bit passive-aggressive in the way that she described, don't you know I'm not Markle, I'm Sussex. So she is, it feels to me, with the interview with people and making sure that was in the show, that she wants everyone to know that she's now Meghan Sussex.
Very deliberate. That was exactly my takeaway. Actually, it was probably the only part of that episode I found particularly interesting. And I'm a big Mindy Kaling fan, so that's disappointing for me to say, because I actually thought that would be a fun one, but no. But we did learn the Sussex details, so.
Got any other royals we can talk about, Matt?
Yeah, we'll get on to the other royals. Let's talk about some other royals now. Yeah. We've obviously seen the reviews for With Love, Meghan, that are terrible. But it's not the first time that members of the royal family have appeared in shows that have caused a little bit of controversy. Bronte, I'm not sure you're old enough, but Arthur, you're definitely old enough to remember It's a Royal Knockout.
I remember it well. I covered it well. We wasn't allowed.
What was It's a Royal Knockout?
It was members of the royal family. The Knockout was a show, a TV show, and it was Prince Edward who wanted to do his own show, Royal Knockout, and he got Prince Andrew, he got Princess Anne, Fergie, and of course himself, all dressed up in these amazing costumes, and
it was almost regal themed, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, yeah.
Pantomime.
And it was dreadful. And I remember he came to the press conference, and he sat there, and the room was full of media, so all there. And he said, "I thought it was a great success. What do you all think?" And there was a silence. And he said, "Well, you feel like that about it?" And he slammed down. He walked out. We didn't get a word from him. He just got very angry and walked out the room. It was just pretty bad. And I think the royals that didn't take part were sort of thankful. They turned out to support him, but it was pretty poor.
Because that was an attempt maybe to kind of, be more like Men of the People, or be a little bit. It was a popular TV show at the time, and they did a royal version of it. They've never returned to that kind of idea, have they? Taken a cultural television show or a cultural point and inserted the royal family into it.
No, I mean they don't. I mean, they do brilliant documentaries on the royal family now, and I mean they are. I think they're just great insight as well, and the fact that the King and other members have allowed that to happen, I think is really good. But that show was, I mean, Edward had just come out of the Marines, I think, and he wanted to go into showbiz. I think I remember turning up for work at one of the theatres in London, carrying a box of tea bags, and he was going to be the tea boy for a while, I mean, he was good fun. I mean, he was difficult for him because, I mean, he started the Marine course, he just couldn't do it. For him, it wasn't for him, and he pulled out. I think that was pretty brave of him, actually. And he's a quiet life. He works very hard for the royal family, keeps very low profile. But then he wanted to go into show business, and this was show business, and he put it on, and it was a bit of a disaster. But they all took part with great enthusiasm. Princess Anne, especially, I remember, she's looking very regal. She was walking along dressed up, great blue outfit, I think it was. And but no, it was an attempt by him to give him to do what he really wanted to do, was work in the theatres and stuff like that. So, but he's now the Duke of Edinburgh, and he works hard on carrying on with the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, and he was married to lovely Sophie, and it's a really nice life now. But he was young. He wanted to make a go of it. We've all done something in our lives when we're starting out our lives, make wrong decisions, go the wrong way sometimes, realise it's not for us and get on with what we should really good at.
It's a Royal Knockout is basically consigned to kind of television history now, and it's never to be repeated. There was another show back, I think it was in 1968, Bronte. Are you aware of this? This is actually banned. It was a royal family documentary that David Attenborough said it would kill the monarchy off. It didn't. You know, I don't want to spoiler alert, but it hasn't killed the monarchy off. But what do we know about this 1968 documentary?
So this was after, well, amid the 60s, a little before my time, I will say. But obviously I know about it. And as soon as you hear the word banned, now I'm desperate to see it. But yeah, it was at a time when, you know, it was the swinging 60s. People were a little bit less deferential, and they thought maybe it'll help, as you said, like convey the royal family in sort of an everyman way, show a little bit more about who they are and make them a little bit more accessible. The big problem with that, and it relates to It's a Royal Knockout, and it relates to Meghan's show as well, is that it's a very fine line of just how much of the royals we want. Like, we all want to see it, but should they be showing it? Because their power is in their mystique. So as soon as you start doing things like the documentary or seeing them running around doing silly competitions, it takes away that regal aspect, and that it's what we want, but it's actually not what we need if the monarchy is to survive. So, yes, thankfully they did survive all of these things. But this documentary had, you know, Prince Philip barbecuing. It had, I think, the Queen taking out Prince Edward for an ice cream. Actually, again, I would love to see it, but I can understand why it's a bit too, I don't know, it removes them from that sort of the pedestal they kind of need to stay on.
It's
to a degree.
behind the curtains.
I remember watching it at the time, Matt, and you know, we never saw anything like that with royals. It was all very exclusive. I mean, even the press office at Buckingham Palace was very. You could never get a proper answer out of them. I remember once asked the Prince Charles was going to the British Shoe Corporation, and they wanted to know what size shoes he took, so they wanted to make a pair of shoes for him. And they said, that's personal, you know. They wouldn't tell him. I mean, that's the sort of... It was very, very secretive, the royal family. That film that came out was very revealing. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, it was a massive viewing figure. I mean, it was only, I think it was on the BBC, but it was tremendous, you know, to see them privately, you know, and see... It was really good. And it was a little bit sort of, I don't know, sort of staged, but I thought it was excellent at the time. You know? I mean, I really enjoyed watching it. I didn't enjoy watching a knockout, and I didn't enjoy watching Meghan, but I can remember that. And you know, when you think about when the royals get involved in something like television that's meaningful, like Diana's interview with Martin Bashir, or whatever, you know, it was riveting. You know, you just couldn't move away from it.
So should royals appear on TV like this then? We talk about the banned documentary, It's a Knockout. I forgot about the Diana documentary. You're totally right, the Diana interview. And then we have the Meghan and Harry show. Should royals be doing this kind of stuff?
Well, the thing is, you know, it's a new era now, Matthew. Everything is like, you know, it's social media, it's clips on, you know, clickbait. Everybody wants to instantly see things. And the royals have got involved in that. You know, they have social media sites. And they do that, and our younger royals, you know, William and Catherine. I mean, when they go on events now, they get involved in it. You know, they really make it work, and it's great for television, and it's great for us. You know, can imagine our late Queen doing anything like that. I mean, I covered our late Queen for 40 years, and you know, never see her actually do anything like that. You know, she would never play table tennis with the kids, or she would never, you know. It was just always formal, and that's what it was like when that video came out in the 60s. You know, we saw something that she was just like a housewife doing the cooking, and it was just really nice. So
it was groundbreaking.
It was groundbreaking, and Meghan's show wasn't groundbreaking. I don't want to go back to that. It wasn't groundbreaking.
Well, it felt dated, but. Yeah, I mean, you talk about the current Queen, Queen Camilla. She appeared on the domestic violence documentary the other day, which was tremendous, and she was wonderful in that. William often fronts up the Earthshot documentaries when
he did
that
the
happens.
Homelessness one recently,
Yeah. So there is a... Well, I forgot about Prince Andrew doing his interview as well, actually. Royals should not appear on TV. All right, let's consign that one to history.
That was the biggest mistake he ever made in his life. I'll tell you what.
Goodness.
The price he's paid for that is too much. I'm not going on about that anymore.
Well, let's get your wish. Let's talk about the working royals this week. The King. Very, very important week for the King. Very, very vital few days for the King. He hosted the Ukrainian President Zelensky at Sandringham. We broke the story in The Sun over the weekend. We knew it was going to happen. How important or vital is it for King Charles to meet Zelensky after everything that's been going on in recent days and weeks?
I thought it was tremendous he did that, the King. I thought the way President Zelensky was treated by the American president and his vice president was appalling, and the King was probably backing up the British government, who totally supported this man. And I thought it was very warm, the pictures, and the King smiling, and you know, and normally with those occasions it's one photograph of them shaking hands, but there were several, you know, seeing him off and making him feel very welcome. And I bet you in that conversation the King was really, really understanding of Zelensky's problems, and he probably listened to him, and they probably had a really heart-to-heart chat about the problems facing this country. We never know about the conversation, and neither should we, but knowing our King, and I think he's a very compassionate man and a very, you know, a very kind person, and I think it would have been great for Zelensky to have that man, you know, come for him in many ways. And the fact is that this Ukraine thing is just a massive story now. Everybody, the whole world's concerned about it. And I think the King just brought a bit of comfort to that man, yeah. I thought it was really nice.
Well, he's spoken out in favour of Ukraine. I remember on the second anniversary of Russia's invasion, he spoke about Russian aggression, and he spoke about the heroism and valour of Ukrainian people. But he has also issued Donald Trump with an invitation, an official kind of invitation for a state visit. Is Charles in a difficult diplomatic situation here?
Well, I do. I feel that, you know, he's a president of the United States, and if a visit helps our Prime Minister and their government to do better business with America, I think, you know, anything to do that. I mean, the King would have been advised anyway to probably issue that invitation. And knowing him, if he thought it was going to do some good, he would agree to it, you know, and I think that's fine. And, you know, pretty soon I imagine there'll be some, if when President Trump comes here, there'll be a reciprocal visit by the King and Queen to the United States. So it can only do good things. And of course, you know, the King is such an amazing man. I mean, I know I'm his biggest hero, I know that, and I keep going on about it, but he very carefully thinks these through for himself, and he would value it on that. He wouldn't just because the Prime Minister said, I want you to do that, he'd do it. He would not if he didn't think it was worth it. And I think, and that's my view, and I just know that if he goes to America, he'll get great reception.
I think there's a few things to add to that. I completely agree in terms of what you've said about offering comfort to President Zelensky after what was an unbelievably volatile weekend, and quite the shockwaves were really felt around the world. It also provided comfort to a lot of people who are concerned about the state of global affairs at the moment. And we've spoken on this show right after the US election last year about the potential role of significance that Charles will have moving on into the future in international relations, and the fact that it's already happening here, where he's wielding an unbelievable amount of power, really, in terms of kind of diplomatically bridging a lot of situations that are all moving very, very fast. And it's actually the best display of the King's diplomacy at the moment. And when you said, does he run the risk of, you know, he's between two very volatile camps. But I think that he's exactly the right person for the job, and I'm really impressed with the way it's been playing out so far, because we know that the US president, is a big fan of the King's. He's very respectful. I think the state visit will be helpful in you know, firming up those ties, because they do need to get support for Ukraine, but also not antagonise the US further. It needs to be very much a coming together, and that's what I've loved to see in terms of King Charles and Keir Starmer's sort of double act on that over the last few days. I think that's been really interesting to watch.
I think the key word used there was bridge. And, you know, we talk about his convening power as a king and Prince of Wales, but providing like a bridge there, as you say, between certain people and certain governments would be really important. But that bridge takes us a nice little segue onto HMS Prince of Wales, where he did appear on the bridge in the English Channel. And what was the significance of that, Arthur? He served in the Navy, but it comes at a time when there's heightened, you know, as we just pointed out there, there's heightened worldwide crisis at the moment.
Well, I think we now know that the aircraft carrier Prince of Wales is working properly. I mean, it's been in dry dock for a while getting repairs, so at least we know it's ready for action if needed. No, I think you know, I've done a couple of visits to those aircraft carriers, and they are massive places to go. And of course, you know, he's, as I say, he was a captain of a ship in the Royal Navy himself, so I think it's a nice thing to do. And of course, he's head of the armed forces, so why not? And the fact that we couldn't go with him was pretty awful, you know, because it was all helicoptered out there. But
he was the first serving monarch to be on an active warship for 40 years. Well, a warship at sea.
I didn't know that.
Just very symbolic.
I didn't know that, no. There you go, Matt. You know a lot of things I don't know.
It says in my notes here.
He's got his notes, he's got his little cheat sheet.
Right, let's do quickly onto our quickfire questions if we can. So take a deep breath. Which royal looks best on camera?
Oh, it's got to be Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine, yeah. Catherine looks great. Whatever camera, wearing jeans, whatever she wears, she looks great.
Yeah, amazing smile.
Yeah, and when she smiles, the room lights up, yeah.
Catherine across the board. Which royal family show do you believe could top the ratings?
Look, I don't want, just to follow on from my previous answer, I have to say, if there was, they shouldn't do it, but if there was a docuseries on William and Catherine, look at all the little behind-the-scenes clips they put up on social media over the last couple of years. They go nuts. People absolutely love it. If there was that kind of thing, but an extended version, I think that would top the ratings.
What, like at Home with the Wales?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or Catherine giving tips on how to take good pictures, because she certainly takes good pictures. She gave a little photographic. I think a lot of people, including me, would watch it.
Well, Netflix, if you're listening, we've got a couple of ideas for you. Might get better ratings. Which royal's cooking would you most like to sample?
It has to be Meghan's, only because I've got to say the food did look delicious. Like a bit too many edible flowers, but I would like to try that food. The donuts especially.
Yeah, but you'd be starving, you starve to death waiting for it, wouldn't you? Took so long to cook. I'd definitely go to Camilla. I reckon she's a really good cook, so I'd go our Queen. Yeah, I think she'd cook you a lovely dinner, and you wouldn't have to wait all day for it.
And you beat the palace when you got to eat it, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And finally, which royal would you most like to have a drink with?
Well, I tell you, I've had a drink with Harry a couple of times, and he's fun. He's so much fun. He gets involved. He makes you laugh. He takes the mickey. He reminds you of what when you've upset him in the past. He's good fun. I mean, I think I'd like really like another drink with Harry.
What's his drink of choice? Do you know what Harry would drink?
Harry, I think he drinks like beer. Yeah. But I remember on one occasion in Jamaica, we were having a drink with him, and one reporter started asking him questions, and Harry sort of said, "Why do I feel I'm being interviewed? I'll come in for a drink." And it was just, he was fun. He was good fun, yeah.
I would love to go out for a drink with Beatrice and Eugenie, because I feel like they have all the celebrity and royal gossip. I think you'd have a really good chat with them.
Yeah.
They seem fun.
Nice kids, yeah.
Me personally, I would, after seeing the final minutes of that Netflix show with Meghan, seeing Harry's face, I would like to take Harry for a drink at a dive bar that I know in Los Angeles and just sit down with him and say, "It's going to be all right, let's have a few drinks." That would be my choice after seeing the end of that show.
And when Harry too much, he gets stripped off and starts playing billiards. You've got to be careful where you
That's the night out I'm talking about.
That's what Matt's after. There's the story.
Right, well, thanks very much, guys. That's all we have time for. We have been, with love, Royal Exclusive. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments as we do read them, and don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. See you all here back next week.